Hello, my name is David Penner, and this is my Module 5 assignment for AEP 800, The World We Live in, Web 2.0. When asked about the divide and whether or not it has been resolved, a couple things need to be taken into account for that. The first of which is the initial cost that the devices are going to cost schools in order to get up to date. A lot of these devices that schools currently use are no longer up to date, and thus districts need different devices. With these devices, the companies usually also have long-term contracts that by the time they're done, the technology itself is outdated and there's better devices out there, so that's going to be a problem. Support, the cost for support as well, whether that's the upkeep as they get passed down year to year and need new programs loaded on or updated programs loaded on, the bandwidth itself for the district in order to support the devices, and then also for the device repair as they get damaged or broken. How are we going to go about fixing those devices? Also, what needs to be taken into account is the school's individual needs. Our district is very much split in the needs that we have for each school. Our elementary school has mostly smart boards in their classroom. However, not all the classrooms have these smart boards. Thus, there's teachers that have to teach without the smart board and those that will actually have the technology in their classroom. The middle school is usually stuck with the hand-me-down computers that are passed down from the high school. And while the high school may get updated computers, there's still some technology that is outdated. Teachers' projectors in their classroom are still on carts, which makes it hard to move around in the classroom itself. And then a lot of our teachers are older in age and thus need the training needed in order to get us to be a Web 2.0 school. Next is the skill set that a 21st century learner needs in order to implement the Web 2.0 into schools. The first is they need responsibility, whether that's charging their devices and then bringing them to school charged, or maybe even bringing the charger to school with them, or the appropriate use of their device. I found that this is one thing that most of my high school students struggle with from day to day. Time management is another issue that students struggle with and a skill set they need to learn. Whether it's handling the distractions that a device presents in the classroom or just turning assignments in on time. Both of those seem to be struggles for students as well. Communication skills, the appropriate use of these different devices, how to communicate using those devices, whether it's by email, text message, social media, or even video chat. Many of my students seem to struggle with the appropriate language that is needed in order to use these types of communication devices. And then finally, collaboration. What appropriate collaboration looks like and how to do that through these devices. Those are the skill sets that a 21st century learner needs. The global economy and personal use. Increasing the global use of technology, that only can help with the implementation of Web 2.0 in our schools. The more use of devices throughout the globe, the more devices that are going to be produced, and thus competition will be bred. And competition is always good for the consumers, as they are the ones that will benefit from different companies making newer devices and ones that will be even more adapted to use in the classroom. As more schools go about implementing the Web 2.0 in their classroom and making that the standard, there will be better programs set up for this, better devices set up for this as well. One thing that I like to use in the classroom is social media. I like to be able to use that in order to communicate not only with my classes and the students that are in my classes, but also with my team as well. As I coach 2 sports, I found it's very easy for me to post an announcement on Twitter and have those guys retweet it so that everybody gets the message across. but I also like to use that in order to support other programs of our school, whether that is clubs or other athletic teams as well. Technology training. So far, I have very little technology training when it comes to using Web 2.0 devices. Our school actually just unlocked Google for us as teachers to use, whether that's Google Classroom or Google Slides, Google Docs, and thus I'm still learning how to use that in a effective collaborative way and have that be a use for my students in the classroom as well. My limited current knowledge affects the students. I don't necessarily have the most creative ways of using this Web 2.0 in the classroom, and thus it's going to be a process in order for me to learn strategies and be able to implement those into my classroom. My school, I feel like our district is actually taking a turn for the better. We just hired a new technology director, as I mentioned before. This technology director had recently unlocked Google and Google Classroom for us as teachers. Along with that, he also formed a technology committee in which several teachers got to pilot new devices such as the Chromebooks and MacBook Airs. And this committee actually got to voice their opinion on the devices that not only us as teachers need, but also the students need as well. We decided as a school to go with the MacBook Airs. And while doing this, we are going to be implementing those new MacBook Airs next year in our school. Along with doing this, we upgraded the access points for our school, making our bandwidth even better than what it was before, and thus being able to support more devices. We also added a guest internet access point as well, which allows for students to actually use their cell phones on the Wi-Fi, and then for other schools as they come in for competitions to access the internet as well. The advantages of Web 2.0. First off, it leads to more creativity for our students. Students take ownership of the material. They're collaborating with each other, so they get to share their ideas. There's very little copyright infringement because most of the material is going to be free for the students to use. As students get the chance to share their ideas and collaborate, they not only get to work with other students inside your classroom, but maybe other classes as well, other schools, and maybe even other countries. The last advantage that I've found with doing Web 2.0 is the actual cost of the material. Once you spend the initial money for the device that your school district chooses to use, the actual service is going to be free. There is no extra cost for your district in order to go Web 2.0. Disadvantages with Web 2.0. Reliable sources. A lot of my students struggle with differentiating between what is opinion and what is fact. What are good sources? What are bad sources? Another disadvantage for going Web 2.0 is the fact that many of these websites that the students will be using will have uncensored comments, whether that's student-to-student comments or other comments from outside individuals that are posted on the websites as well. Lastly, most of these programs are going to be ad-based as well. In order for them to be free to the public, they must have some type of revenue coming in, and thus comes ads. These ads can be appropriate or they can be inappropriate. While this may be a necessity for the websites in order to remain free, it may serve as a disadvantage for your students as well. As far as inappropriate use and cyberbullying goes, I believe that while we encourage students to use the devices appropriately, there's going to be some that use them inappropriately. Whether that's just gaming, bootlegging videos, both of those will increase the virus and malware that is going to be loaded onto your students' computers and thus slowing them down. Last year, I had a student that decided to use his technology in an inappropriate way. He went home and filmed a YouTube video that was very explicit and had some comments about our administration on there. Needless to say, that student is no longer with us at our district. However, this is something that can occur with the use of technology. Last, but certainly not least, is the issue of cyberbullying. While the increased use of technology in your classroom and the devices that you use may be beneficial for the classwork, it opens up different avenues for students to use in order to bully each other. While the use of technologies continues to be essential in creating a Web 2.0 classroom, it is our job as facilitators and educators to make sure that the students are using those devices in the most appropriate way possible. Thank you again for watching my video. I look forward to hearing your guys' comments.